Well, here we are in my shop now. And what do we got? 10 minutes after 8. Looks like 20 degrees. Well, I'm not going to be in here very long. Well, last night I was sitting in my recliners thinking, and I just started looking back over some of my older videos, and I got to thinking there had been a few times that someone had asked me about how I go about making my prototype engines, and I decided I'm going to go back and pull out the videos over the couple of months or whatever it was that I was working on one of them, and I decided to do the 4-cylinder one that I have on my lawnmower body right now. I did some testing on it and whatever, so I've got some videos, and it's on there right now, and I'm going to be working on it some more this spring. I'm going to put my pressure flow regulator on it, which I haven't had a chance to do yet, and see if it makes it any better when I have the new pressure flow regulator on it. So I'll show you some of the drawings and some of the actual videos over a couple of months' time that I put together while I was working on it. It does take a fair amount of just sitting on the computer trying different design ideas and different drawings, and as I'm progressing through that, every time I go back in and look at one of the drawings that I'm working on, the next day or maybe a couple days later, I see something that I didn't catch the first time, so I have to go back in and make some changes. Sometimes that change is pretty big, depending on how many of the parts that it affects. If I have to take everything apart and rebuild it, well, then it's going to take quite a bit longer, naturally. Now, this is going to be a fairly long video, but it'll show you the breakdown of how I did it over about a 5-month period. So I'm just going to take a few parts with me down to the house, and then I'll work on that video. So turn my little switch off here and close my door and head back down to the house. Today I've been working on my valve head, and for me, getting this 1.125" bearing hole bored into it was quite a challenge for me. I have a 4-chuck non-centering head, and I had already drilled the 1/2-inch hole and then wanted to center it and bore out for the 1.125", and I had quite a time before I finally got it centered. Well, after a lot of checking and looking and making sure everything seemed to be right, I finally got the half-inch hole bored out to an 1/8 inch so that the bearing fits in it now, and I think it works pretty fair. Goes in pretty easy. And then I was able to drill out with a 15/16 and then bore out this to allow me to tap it for a 1-inch pipe. Although this is just a test piece, but I did pretty good, except I'm not sure how I can get this tap in there straight up and down to make sure it's not tilted. This one, I didn't have it quite level in the vise, I think, and it came out a little bit crooked. I can screw the pipe in it okay, but if you've got a good eye, you can see that that's not quite straight up and down. I think it's leaning this way a little bit to me, that way a little bit now. But I'll have to be more careful on the next one. This is the actual piece that I'll be working on, so I'll have to be more careful to make sure that I've got that straight up and down when I set that tap on it to tap it. I have one of my 4 valve head bodies finished, and I'll kind of show you what it looks like. This is where the rotator shaft will go through. It'll rotate so like so, back and forth. And these are the 2 valve stems, intake and exhaust. The exhaust will come out in this hole here. This plugged hole goes completely through down to this plug, and this hole goes through and meets this hole, and both of them come out into the cylinder that will be screwed into this hole here. So this plug joins this plug and this plug so that the air ends up coming out here. The air inlet goes here, and this just has to be plugged to allow the exhaust to go from the cylinder back through here. And when this is pushed down, it opens this hole and allows the exhaust to come out through here. I'll show you in a minute what it looks like on the inside so that you can see kind of what I'm trying to explain. Hi, welcome back to Air Engine Research. Today will just be a short video to let you know what I worked on today. I worked on the 4 cylinders that you can see in the upper right side, and the drive shaft rotator module. I found that my design looked like it needed to have something that I can use to adjust the rotator inside the ring. I don't think I can make it tight enough without having some sort of adjustment. So in this next picture, this is the new design. I'm going to cut an access hole or mill an access hole into the side plate on both sides of the bearings and notch the 1/2 inch hole on the bottom so that the bearing can be adjusted inside the ring once it's there. I'll have to drill a hole through the end of it and tap it and put an adjusting screw with a lock nut on it so that it will be permanent. And you can see in this next one how the notched out end is with the adjusting screw. And I think that'll be fine. I was able to get everything put together and tried it temporarily with this piece that I had already made from one time before. It's not exactly the same as it will be, but it gives you the idea of how it will be adjusted inside the ring once it's put together. I finally got all 8 of my driveshaft rotor modules made. They don't look maybe like much, but there's 8 different operations that has to be done. There's 8 holes. 3 of them have to be milled out, which takes quite a while, and then drilled and tapped for each set screw and for each quarter 20 that's going to be in it. So far I've got my one head made. We got the 4 valve, the 4 cylinders finished. I made the design so that they just screw into the head, and as it rotates, then the cylinder goes back and forth to make the ring, which are these. I don't have those finished yet. I've got to mill out the inside and mill off the outside, drill a hole in it, and there'll be, each one of these will be welded to it, and that will go like inside of the piston. I have all the parts completed now, and some of the assemblies that I need to put together first. This is the main housing that the completed assemblies will be put into. The reason for these slots is when I assemble the parts that go up on the top part of the engine, which is the valves, rocker valve heads. They will just be assembled outside on the workbench, and then these will be taken off and then just slide in, and then put the 2 plates back over to hold that in place. Same thing for these on the bottom. This will be where the main drive shaft and the ring assembly and crankshaft rotor assembly is put into. You assemble it outside, slip it in, and put the bearings back on. Not much more to say about this. So let's go ahead and take a look at my parts that I have put together and laid out. Okay, these are all of the parts that go into the engine. This is the drive ring. These things are what I call drive shaft rotators. They go inside of each of the rings. They have 2 main bearings and then 2 smaller bearings that position it inside. The 2 holes here are what goes over the drive shaft, and these rotate the drive shaft as they rotate. There's 2 set screws here, 2 set screws here that will position it on the drive shaft. These rings are steel. The rotator assemblies are aluminum. These are the cylinders, and as you can see, it goes inside or over the top of the stem on the rotator ring. This is a piston that goes inside, and it's a free-floating piston. So that means that when the engine is running, it'll rotate like so, up and down, and the piston is what pushes it up and down naturally. And if you are accelerating or the engine is running, the piston is pushing down. If you stop accelerating or shut the air off, piston stops. If you're moving, the ring continues to go around up and down, but the piston doesn't move. That's going to say wear and tear on the seal. Let's see. These are what I call valve head assemblies. There's two valves in each one. You have this is the intake, and this is the cylinder, and this is where the exhaust valve is inside. All you see on the outside is a stem, which gets pushed and pulled. When you put air into it, this valve is shut. If this is pushed in, that lets air come in, come to the cylinder, push it down. When this is shut off, and this is shut off, the piston can't move, so you have to open the valve. That lets the piston push, or this rotator ring, push the piston back up into the cylinder and come out through the exhaust hole here. And this has to rock up and down to do that, open and close the valve. When it rocks up, it pushes it in, lets the air in, goes, pushes the piston down. As it gets down to the bottom, the ring goes to the bottom, starts to go back to where it wants to push it back up. It pushes the exhaust valve open, and this goes closed, so that lets the piston push the air in, push it over, and then push it out through the exhaust hole. Okay. Yeah. As I showed you, this is the drive shaft. This is the what I call the valve head rotator shaft. It doesn't rotate. I mean, it's stationary, but it allows the head to go back and forth like so, as much as it needs to complete the revolution on the ring. And as I said, the ring does not turn around this way. It only goes up and down, and as it does, this part stays stationary up here, or up here, it's stationary. And as it goes around, it comes back up like so. And that's what actually pushes the rotator inside the ring to make it rotate in a circle. These two plates here are going to be mounted in the top of the engine housing. They'll have holes drilled in them, and each of these will be screwed into it, and that's what the valve head will hit in order to open and close. I've made it so that I can adjust these up or down to adjust the engine running, actually. so that they open and close at the proper time. Well, good morning again. Today is another day. Yesterday I finished adjusting the valves and stuff, and then I started to make a system for holding the air lines and stuff. So I made a piece up here that will be for the 4 air lines and to hold the bracket down. Let's get in there. That looks like that. Yeah. Lobe in it though. Which one is doing it? Okay, I've decided that the valves are leaking, so I'm gonna have to fix them. The last couple of days I've been working on all the valve heads. I did some testing with different pressures, and I found that the valves and the seats that I had been using with the faucet washers was not holding up under a little bit higher pressures. If I got up around 300 psi, one of them pushed the valve stem actually through the seat, so I couldn't have that. So I took these all back off, took them apart. I made some modifications on it where I'm using a tapered 5/16 bolt, and I machined it down to be a valve stem, and I countersunk the seat inside the valve to match the tapered valve head. And once I did that, then I got things pretty well sealed up where they don't seem to leak, and I don't have to worry about the higher pressures. After I got these all put back in, I decided I wanted to do some testing on how it might run and how much pressure I'm going to be getting on the actual cylinder to the valve and to the crankshaft. So I did some of that, and to my surprise, I had it hooked up to just one cylinder, number 4. So I had the air pressure set on 100 psi and just one cylinder running. And when I moved the thing to get the number 1 cylinder, the number 4 up to the top up here, I wanted to see when the actual valve started to open. But to my surprise, it actually started running when I turned over on one cylinder, which I didn't think it would do that. So in further testing, then I decided, well, I wanted to see what would happen if I hooked up, say, number 1 and number 3. And once again, as soon as I got the valves set, got number 1 up to the top, just turned it over to where it would start, they started running again. So after I worked on that for a while, then I wanted to see again with running just 1 cylinder how many pounds it would pick up total. So I ended up getting enough metal together to make 50 pounds. And then I set my air pressure on 75 psi, and I'll show you then what happened with how much it would pick up. Okay, it's on 75 psi. Now I've got the air open. And if I move it to where it takes off, .75 psi picks up 50 pounds. But 75 psi on 1 cylinder would pick up 50 pounds and still be able to pick up more if I would have added more to it. But I was rather happy with that it's got pretty good. And for the most part, I couldn't detect any leaks anywhere, so that's also a good sign. I was going to take the 4-cylinder and put it on my lawnmower body. It's not very pretty, but it's got 4 wheels, steering wheel, and a seat, and it's got a foot pedal for gas or for air. So I'm ready to try it. I'm going to see what happens. Okay. Well, we got the air on, and let's see if it flies. Well, I'd say it flies.